Hey guys, welcome back from Thanksgiving. We're so glad that you guys decided to go ahead and meet and have CGs this week. Did you have a happy Thanksgiving?
Did have a great Thanksgiving. It was a lot of fun, a lot of food, got to see family.
Yeah.
It's always good. How about you?
Awesome. It
Yeah.
was really good.
Yeah.
So much food. So my favorite thing is cranberry sauce.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I don't like cranberry sauce.
That's so weird. You're so
Yeah,
weird.
it tastes like candy,
Anyway,
doesn't it?
this is my name is Rocky. I'm the Connection Pastor out at the 40 campus. I'm here today with Kyle Kelly, who is the campus pastor in Rockwall. And today's sermon was about gratitude. I'm sure all of you were surprised to come to church this morning and find out that we were talking about gratitude right out of Thanksgiving, right? So one of the things that people typically do at Thanksgiving is they talk about, what are you thankful for this
Right.
year? What were you thankful for this year?
Well, it's funny because when somebody asks me, my family's always one of the first things I think about. I just want to say, how grateful I am for my family. And I am. I mean, that's absolutely true. But it just seems like that's kind of the answer that should come to mind. But I am very thankful for a lot of things. We are healthy. We've got great kids. Everybody's doing well. Been a great year. It's awesome to be here in Rockwall. We just moved here a couple months ago. There's a lot of things. So it's easy for me right now. I'm in that season of gratitude that things are really good.
Yeah.
How about you?
I think for me, I'm going to say family, but I'm going to say family with a caveat because my dad died 1 year ago.
Oh, yeah.
And so just to see when you have like your patriarch die,
Right.
it's kind of a big deal. And I think this year our family has really grown a lot. We've experienced a lot of grace from the Lord this
Yeah.
year, and to just see that in like my sisters and my brother. And God's moving in my own life has just been really terrible and wonderful. And I'm glad we made it.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're
Yeah.
almost a year out, and everything is getting better.
Yeah,
So
that's
as
good.
God continues to reveal. What about you guys? What are you grateful for this year and this season? Why don't you go ahead and hit pause and talk about that as a CG? So, you chose, when you actually kind of wrote the outline for this sermon, and you chose a scripture called in Philippians chapter 4, verse 6, which essentially just says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God.
Right.
What is Paul writing about when he's, like, what is the context of that verse?
Yeah, and that's a great question because Philippians is a phenomenal book. It's super, super, super important. And one of the things that I love about it is Paul is talking to the church in Philippi, who is a very healthy church. They got a lot of great things that have happened in the church. But when we get to chapter 4, he addresses specifically a conflict that they're having that we don't know exactly what's happened. We know there's great people involved in this church and some great leaders, and it's amongst the leadership in some kind of disagreement. And so he addresses the fact that they have a disagreement and that things aren't going right. And then he gets into this part of the passage where he explains about how do we walk in a righteous life with other people in community.
Right.
And part of that is that we were praying about it and we were doing this with thanksgiving.
Right.
And so it's a great verse about when we're in life and things aren't exactly right. How do we really thank God in the middle of that?
Yeah, it seems like he's specifically he's speaking into a relationship issue.
Right.
And I know that at this time of year, like relationships can be difficult for a lot of people,
Right,
especially because we're going to be spending so much time with our families
Right.
and all of that stuff. Why does gratitude, or how can gratitude really help people
Yeah.
work through all of that stuff?
Yeah, again, that's such an important part because, my family functions pretty well. We're not the perfect family, but we have a distance, and we've always kind of had our own little lanes. And when we stay in our lanes, we get along well.
Right.
When we're together too much, sometimes we get a little different. We have some different beliefs and some things like that. But the idea that we're appreciative and grateful for the other person, even in their differences, helps us to get along. We're adding value into their life when we appreciate them. And it's true in any relationship. If you'll show some appreciation and gratitude towards that person, you elevate them to being more than just something that's less than ourselves. We actually lift them above us. And so being grateful and appreciative of that is hard sometimes, but to find those things that we can appreciate really help the relationship a lot.
Yeah, and I know that none of you people at home have any conflict with any of your family members at all. But why don't we just take a second and as a group talk about what would happen if there is a conflict in your family? Do you think that learning to thank God for those people or those relationships would help at all? If not, maybe you guys can just take a second and talk about maybe some ways that you can approach those relationships, especially during the season. The key here, one of the things that you really talk about in this message is perspective, and how perspective really dictates everything. And you kind of give a hierarchy to kind of, I guess, put into perspective the way that we see gratitude and the way that we experience gratitude.
Right.
You give an example to say, when you have less, you tend to be grateful for less, and when you have more, you tend to be grateful for more. But that doesn't really sound like a good thing. Could you expand on that?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and again, perspective, it changes almost everything we do. You know, if you like, and one of the things that that I wrote in my notes was, you know, if you are homeless and you have an opportunity to stay in some kind of a shed or some type of shelter from the wind or the cold, you're super appreciative of that. But if you've had a house and you've lost it and you're in a shed, you're going the wrong direction in perspective and you think it's a terrible thing, right? And so the idea that we should always be appreciative and looking in gratitude towards what we have, again, if you don't have much, you feel like you don't have a lot to be grateful for, and you have a lot. But often it's the other way around. It's those that don't have much appreciate things more greatly than those that have a lot. Sometimes just take it for granted. I should have more. And so it's our job. It's our heart's condition that we find a way to find value in everything that we have. And, you know, the Word says the more you're blessed, the more is expected. I mean, for much that's been given, much is expected from.
Right.
And we don't always function that way. So we kind of expect to have more if we have more.
So what about like rubber meets the road, practicality? You know, I heard this great sermon this morning, and I'm learning all about perspective and Thanksgiving. But maybe my life is not a life of homelessness. Maybe my life, maybe I'm starting from a higher perspective.
Yeah.
How do I cultivate gratitude in my life if I'm not, if I don't experience lack?
Yeah, and that's great, because I think for me, it goes back to relationships, as you said a while ago. Everything in life is better in relationship. The Scripture says when we have sorrow and you're in a relationship, it's cut in half. When you're in a relationship and things are good, it doubles.
Right.
That math doesn't work. It shouldn't work that way, right? I mean, it should be even all the time. But in relationship, things are better. And so I would say one of the huge things that we can take away from learning about gratitude is that we should appreciate everything in however it's possible to appreciate it. So let me use your example of what you've gone through this last year.
Okay.
I lost my father a few years ago, and it's very tragic, and really shakes up a lot of things. But I can see some of the things that I've learned and refined my value of things from the loss of my father to where I am without having had that loss. I wouldn't see things the same way.
Right.
So even though I'm not thankful that he passed away, I am thankful what God taught me through his passing.
Right.
And so again, trying to find a value and appreciation for everything. And in relationships, even those that are difficult, how did God use that difficult relationship to make us better? Yeah. How did God help us grow as a person? So if you've been hurt by somebody and you've learned forgiveness, then that helps us understand God's forgiveness for us
for sure
better than if we had never had to forgive. And so even though we don't like some of the circumstances, giving value to that, which means appreciating, can help us to see things in a new perspective, a more godly perspective.
One of the things you say, to quote you from your sermon, you say, to say thank you is to acknowledge that someone has done something for us and we want to express our emotional connection. To not say thank you is saying, I don't appreciate you or your act. But either way, you have expressed something.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really profound, because we don't necessarily think that we're always communicating something to somebody, whether I'm communicating gratitude towards you or disdain towards you, or I'm communicating gratitude towards God or disdain towards the Lord and the things that he's doing. Whether you're communicating gratitude or you're not communicating gratitude, actively or passively, that's profound, and it does go back to relationships.
Yeah.
When you guys are approaching these relationships, these difficult relationships, have there been things that you have learned from difficult relationships that maybe you can look back on and say, oh, well, it was terrible circumstances, but I'm really grateful and God proved himself faithful, or that you learned something? Just take a second and talk about that as a group. In the same way that we talk about expressing gratitude in personal relationships, you also talk about expressing gratitude in your relationships towards God. You say the same goes with our relationship towards God. Gratitude and thankfulness towards God is an act of submission to his reign and his position. And to not be grateful says that we are standing equal or above him in our view. That is huge. Yeah. I mean, those are fighting words, man.
Yeah.
So how did you come to that conclusion?
Well, I just know that, again, when you look at the picture of God's forgiveness for us, it is a picture that we did not deserve it, and it was given to us freely and offered. That grace and that mercy is offered to us when we don't deserve it, and we're getting what we, we're not getting what we deserve, and yet we're getting something that God decides to pay for and gives it to us for free. Is this idea of forgiveness? If you don't accept that, then it's just like in any relationship. If somebody asks for, gives you an apology and asks for forgiveness, and we refuse, there's pride. There's a reason we want to stay in control and have that leverage.
Yeah.
And our position to the Father is that obviously He created the world, we didn't.
Right.
He can sustain it, we cannot. And yet we still sometimes look to Him as going, hey, I'm not fully submitting to you. I'm going to stay on the equal footing in our minds. Obviously, it's not theologically.
Yeah, but until like we're dealing with all of these sermon notes and all this stuff, it never has occurred to me to say that my level of gratitude towards God or my attitude of thankfulness is in almost proportion to how much I'm willing to submit and recognize God's authority over my own life.
Yeah.
That's different. That's a game changer, man.
Yeah.
Especially when I think about how am I discipled, because I guess really the conviction, the growth moment for me is to say, I might not understand what I'm going through. It might be difficult, but I trust God.
Right.
And if you say that you're going to work all things out to the good of those who love you, and your promises are true, then I can be grateful because I know that you're working towards my good.
Exactly.
But the fact of the matter is, and this is it, not expressing that gratitude in those moments is almost like saying, I don't trust you, and I don't really believe that when you tell me it's going to be okay, that it's going to be okay.
Right, yeah.
There might be some people at home who are really struggling with that, who struggle with experiences or moments that they've had in their lives that makes it difficult for them to submit to God in those ways. I can think of, like, whether it's abuse or they feel like they've been unjustly treated at work or in a relationship. How, as our pastor, how would you direct us, guide us, or counsel us to get back on track and to heal that?
Yeah, and a key step to that is going to be the willingness to forgive. Yeah. It's easy to say, I'll forgive. It's hard to actually do it.
Right.
And some of the circumstances in our life are self-inflicted bad choices. Most of them that really devastate us are somebody else's choices that have hurt us. And sometimes we can't fully reconcile. They're not willing to admit responsibility or take blame.
Right.
And so we've got to self-process that, and the Lord does that. But ultimately, it's us taking a step forward to say, I'm willing to move towards forgiveness.
Right.
And to trust God that He's going to work that out. So one of the other circumstances that happened in my life when I was younger, my brother passed away of cancer. And I tell people all the time, it's not anything that I'm thankful for the event, but I'm thankful for the work that God did in my life from the event.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's kind of strange for somebody to stand up and say, yeah, I'm really thankful for that death. And I mean, that doesn't make any sense. It was a tragedy, but God was still in charge because He controls all of life and death. And so I have to believe that. And so therefore, He's got something to use me in. And then most of my ministry, I've had opportunity to deal with people that have had a loss.
For sure.
Because I know what it's like. But it's a forgiveness or a trusting or an acceptance of what has happened, and let's learn from that and then see what God uses that. And most of the time in our healing, He'll use us to help in healing other people.
Right. And for me to forgive somebody, does that mean that I have to be in a relationship with that person?
Yeah, no. I think that's a misnomer that we sometimes think that has to happen. Just being reconciled means I've given up the grudge or the feelings or the hurt or the wound. It's still been there, but no, we'll never. Some relationships will never be able to be fixed, and some of it's on one side or the other.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's forgiveness is not necessarily complete relational reconstruction.
Yeah. That's a different issue.
Yeah.
That's a different sermon.
Right. We'll do that next Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah, for sure. In 1 year, come back and we will answer all your relationship questions too. Hey guys, we thank you guys for just making the effort to come and have community group. I know that a lot of you are spending tons of time with family, but your friends and your community are really important too. So thank you for making the effort. We hope that you guys are enjoying each other's company, that you had a great Thanksgiving, and that you have meaningful conversations about gratitude tonight. If you do, go ahead. I think I would love for you guys to post some of your thoughts and your reactions and some of the things that you're thankful for on your page, your community page, whether you're the part of the Sunnyvale group on Facebook or the Forney group or the Rockwall group or the Kaufman page. That would be really interesting. We hope you guys have a good night. Thanks for spending time with us.